Good morning to you all. Good afternoon to those of us on the East Coast. I am Stephanie Staley, and I am really excited to talk to you guys about hypersonics today. I'm trying really hard to make this kind of interactive so that it's just not me sitting here talking at you for an hour. So I would greatly appreciate it if you play along and interact with us. And so let me pull up some slides. And as we learned during COVID, you cannot share your screen without talking through the process of sharing your screen. It's just not, it's not physically possible. All right. So, and is everyone able to see the slides up there? Perfect. All right, so as I shared already, I'm Stephanie Staley, and I want to talk to you guys about hypersonics and our Hypersonics STEM curriculum. And so to kind of get it started, and you can either do show of physical hands or you can use the reactions to show a hand up. If I asked you what is paleontology, how many of you could confidently answer that question? I got a physical hand, thumbs up. Hands or emotions from other people. Yeah. And then I go through and I ask the next question is, there we go. When do you first remember learning about paleontology? And so, you know, a quick raise of hands, you know, who knew about paleontology before you went to, you know, kindergarten? Or who learned about dinosaurs and paleontology when you're in elementary school? You know, who didn't learn about this until middle school or high school? Or, and I doubt anyone, but anybody not learn about paleontology until, you know, secondary school or later? Right. And so this is kind of our basis. We all know what a paleontologist is. Not everybody went on to study paleontology, but you left elementary school really excited about dinosaurs and knowing that if you wanted to go dig holes in the backyard and find bones, that was a legitimate, okay career choice. So then I asked the same question, you know, how many of you know what hypersonics is? Right? And that answers my question of, you know, when did you first learn about hypersonics? You know, for most of you, that's going to be today. And so, you know, we go back to the paleontologists. You know, we didn't all become paleontologists, but we all knew that was an option at a very young age. And we were all kind of excited about it at a young age. But hypersonics is kind of the new upcoming technology, and you know, we don't know about it. And so how do we get our students to know that that is an option? Because right now, getting into the hypersonics workforce is a tap on the shoulder. And I am a great and weird example of this. Prior to this, I was a high school physics teacher. I taught physics for 12 years between Pennsylvania and Virginia. And you know, I knew the words hypersonic and supersonic, and we'll learn all about those later, but I didn't really know that that was an option, let alone an option for me, until one of the gentlemen that I coached lacrosse with came up to me and said, I need your resume. Because a couple years earlier, I had quit teaching and went back and got a PhD in science education research. And I had just finished, I was looking for a job, and he's like, I need your resume. And I laughed at him, because he had just retired from the Navy, where his job in the Navy was creating war games for submarines. And I was like, you don't have a job for me, there's no way. And then he called me the next day and said, no, really, I need your resume. I have the perfect job for you. And he did, because now my job is many-faced, but my most fun part, one of it, is that I am creating curriculum so that we can reach out to our elementary, middle, high school students and get them excited about hypersonics. And so our goal as part of the Joint Hypersonic Transition Office Workforce Development Team is to shift it so it's not just people getting tapped on the shoulder and saying, I need your resume, you'd be really good for this job. And it's actually students knowing about it, and they don't all have to go into hypersonics, but I would love for them to know that that's an option. And it's a cool option, as we'll learn a little bit more later. So what I want to do with you for the next 45 minutes is I want to talk to you a little bit about what is hypersonic, how fast is hypersonic, talk about the areas of study within hypersonics, and then more of that career development, like what can I study if I want to go? If I think hypersonics is really cool, what different career paths could I take? And then talk a little bit about, beyond hypersonics. And then all of this, I want to tie into this hypersonic STEM curriculum. And a little bit about that really quick. Our team has been working for the past 2.5 years on developing lessons for really 3rd grade through high school physics that uses hypersonics as the context for stuff that you're already teaching them. So they're aligned with next generation of science standards, which I know as an after-school program is kind of important for you, but not super important for you. But it's using hypersonics as a way to teach other concepts that they have to learn anyways. And we currently have 40+ lessons up there, and you will do one of them here shortly, and we'll talk more about them as we go along. So we are going to, we're going to escape for, so hold on. I'm going to be less awkward here for a second. I want to start with an activity with you guys. And in the chat, I'm going to drop a link to a Google Doc. And if you don't mind heading in, you will find a set of pink slides, and you claim one of them on your own. And each slide has 12 objects, and I would like you to put those objects in order from slowest to fastest. So find a slide that hasn't been taken, put your name on it to mark it for yourself so someone else doesn't take it. And then put those objects in from the slowest object to the fastest object. How do you mark yours? You can put your name on it. You can put a picture of your dog on it, however you'd like to mark yours. I mean, and no shame here. You can use a name that's not actually yours if you don't want people to know how well or not well you do on this. And while you're working, this is actually one of our lessons in the curriculum. This is the virtual adaptation of it. And I'll explain a little bit more of it, but it starts with having students sort it and then having them work on a number line to put it actually. Hillary, is the satellite in a geostationary orbit or is it moving? Me wanting to nail this. You know what? You can decide this. I'm gonna go with geostationary orbit, but you can put that up for interpretation. All right. In the chat, does anyone need a couple more seconds to think? All right. All right. So as I shared, when you do this as the actual lesson, you would have the students do what you did first, and then you're given a number line, and the students have to actually put their objects on the number line for how fast they go. And I'm not gonna lie, this is really fun to watch how fast some students think things go. But the number line does have in the lesson meters per second and miles per hour. So you use the scientific notation and our everyday units. But how fast is hypersonic? So hypersonic refers to anything moving at 5 times the speed of sound or faster. So for reference, and speed of sound depends on a lot of things, but the number we tend to use as its average is 343 meters per second or 767 miles per hour. It speeds up and slows down based off of temperature and where you are in the atmosphere and whatnot, but most physics textbooks will use 343 as our baseline. So Mach 5, or 1,715 meters per second, is hypersonic. And so a great way to explain this is, you know, a football field is about 100 meters. So we're going about 17 football fields every second, which is pretty darn fast. So hypersonic is anything this or faster. So if we look at your number line and the things you just put in order, hypersonic here is Mach 5 or faster. So looking at what you did on the Google Slides, almost all types of flight that we deal with are subsonic. So subsonic refers to slower than sound. So a person running at a normal pace is about Mach 0.005. So 0.005 times the speed of sound. You know, a car going at about 55 is Mach 0.06. Something that flips people up is a bullet train is not actually as fast as we think it is, but it's still pretty fast. And when we get up to passenger planes, that is the fastest we go before breaking the speed of sound, and that's about Mach 0.71. That little red plane on there is really cool. That is the Bell X, and I am blanking out, Bell X5, Bell X, I forget the number. It is the first aircraft to break the sound barrier. So it went a max of Mach 1.06. And in the chat, if you know this, does anyone know what happens when you break the sound barrier? Yes, no? What we got here? Hillary, sonic boom. Yes. So whenever you go faster than sound, there's this huge buildup of pressure and you hear a sonic boom. It's a loud pop. There was actually one out in my area last summer or 2 summers ago. There was an aircraft flying in the no-fly zone. I'm pretty close to DC, and so they sent out 2 military aircraft after it, and they broke the sound barrier, and lots of people were not happy with the sound, but I thought it was really cool. So that's that. If we keep moving down, at Mach 1.55, we have a military aircraft that is used pretty normally, but it's still not hypersonic. The first hypersonic aircraft that we had is the one that is the black one that's in the black and white picture, and that is the X-15. It was the first aircraft to go hypersonic, and it maxed out at just below Mach 6. Okay. Can you hear me now? So, okay, my computer just said I was muted, so again, we're doing really good with audio today. I'm loving this. And we'll talk more about the X-15 because it actually had to solve a lot of really cool problems that we'll talk about more later. But the things that are really fun are the ones in the red box, and they're the ones that really throw people with just how fast they go. So a satellite just orbiting Earth goes at about Mach 9. So 9 times the speed of sound, which is really, really fast. But we don't think of them as being fast because when you look them up in the sky, you know, if you have the app that shows you where all the satellites and planets and whatnot are, they don't look like they're moving, but it's because they're so far away, they're actually moving very fast to stay in orbit with the Earth. A space shuttle has to go Mach 22, almost Mach 23, to get out of Earth's atmosphere. And then my favorite, and this is a really cool thing if you do the actual number line with a bunch of students, is a meteor goes almost Mach 40, so 40 times faster than sound. Or it's also, you know, 8 times faster than the fastest aircraft we have ever flown. And this really blows students' minds because they more than likely have seen a shooting star, and shooting stars are going ridiculously fast. And I purposely made it, if you do this activity, which is seriously my favorite one to do, is that the number line isn't big enough for the meteors. And so then you have the discussion of how much bigger would we have to make this to really see how much faster a meteor is than a car. So things that I think that are cool. So linking this back to the curriculum that we have developed, there is a whole bunch of lessons for all different grade levels that really help students get a grasp of how fast is this fast. The activity we just did was from the 3rd grade, How Fast is Hypersonics? And I have done this with elementary school, middle school, high school, adults. It is my favorite lesson by far, and I think one of the most impactful. There is a cool lesson in the 5th grade one that uses a set of YouTube videos that was made by the University of Maryland. And the YouTube is called Everyday Objects at Not So Everyday Speeds. And so they put little micro figures of everything from the turtle that is their mascot at the University of Maryland to models of aircraft from Star Wars to Chuck Norris, and they put them in their wind tunnel at Mach 6, I believe, and they see if they can, you know, do a flight and stay stable. And so, like, it's a really cool thing, and you get to see wind tunnels, and we'll talk about wind tunnels more later. You know, in middle school, we have a web quest that's all about supersonic, and we talk about sonic booms, and we actually talk about how there's it's a web quest, so you watch different videos and different resources. And if you've seen a whip crack, you have heard a mini sonic boom, which I think is a cool thing for them to realize and learn about. A newer one on here that's really cool is that you can do a virtual scavenger hunt of the Udvar-Hazy Air and Space Museum in DC. And they have a number of supersonic and hypersonic aircraft, and it is a Google virtual thing, so you can actually walk through it and turn around and whatnot. And so that is super cool. And then if you are working with high school kids who are doing physics, we turn some of your normal physics problems into hypersonic problems. You know, how far do you go if you go from 0 to 50? Okay, well, how far do you go if you go from 0 to hypersonic? And really getting that grasp of just how big is big. All right. So that was just a lot of information for you. So what I want you to take a minute is you just did that activity with those objects. And what I would love to know is if you were to do that with your students, what's an object you might add to the mix that would make it more fun for your students? Or what's an object that you could add to that activity that they could do as part of the number line that would maybe be more culturally relevant for them? So throw your ideas in the chat. You can't hear me anymore. Is that correct? Or yes, you can hear me.
I can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay, got it. Kara
How
said
about
she
now,
can't hear
Kara?
me anymore.
Okay. I have a feeling you just weren't talking.
Oh, got it. Perfect. All right, so yeah,
And then
put
just,
in your ideas in the chat. Yeah?
I was gonna say, while people are putting their ideas in the chat, I was just gonna let you know, what we can see on our screen right now is the PowerPoint that is just highlighting the Google slide. I'm not sure if that was what you were intending to share.
Oh, no, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. So hold on. Do you see my PowerPoint now?
Yes, now it's think
Oh,
outside the box. There's the number line.
oh, so you guys missed this whole, I am so sorry. Again, my computer hates Zoom. Okay, so this probably makes more sense now that I just explained that, looking at
It's
just the Google
perfect.
slide. Yeah. Oh, horses and arrows. I love that. No, that is very cool. And just as a note, I had a group that were doing this with middle schoolers for 4-H, and oh, the Sonic the Hedgehog movie to add the Sonic characters. I love that you said that, because there's actually a lesson for middle school that they're asking them to create posters aimed at elementary school students where they use a superhero or a Sonic character or a Pokemon, and there's a whole list of them that either have supersonic or hypersonic powers to explain supersonic and hypersonic. So it's like they're creating like an infographic type of poster that's aimed for elementary kids, and there's a whole list of Sonic the Hedgehog characters that are on that. So, but gentleman was working with a group of mostly boy middle schoolers, and they added how fast is a fart to the hypersonic thing, because, you know, middle schoolers love those types of jokes. And so they looked up online of how fast it was, and then they added it to the number line. And so silly, fun things like that really engage the students. And I love the idea of adding arrows. And, you know, you could even do how fast are arrows shot out of different bows. You could do a compound bow or a straight bow and all of that. So those are really cool. Okay, so I apologize that you were not moving with me. Does the hypersonic thing make more sense now that you can see the number line? Again, technology is a great thing. All right. So hypersonics is really cool because we go really fast, but because we're going really fast, we have really tough problems to deal with. And so I talked back to the fact that the X-15 was the first aircraft to go hypersonic. And they had a lot of issues. If you remember from physics or chemistry, as materials get hot and get cold, they expand and they contract. And so when you're going really, really fast, you have a lot of heat, so materials heat up. But also, you have to start landing at the ground, which is at a normal temperature, and you're flying through the different layers of Earth's atmosphere, which the temperatures are really hot, really cold, depending on where you are. And so, how do you build something that the materials play nice together, the materials don't fall apart, the materials can withstand the heat? One of the problems they actually had with the X-15 is when they started on the ground, there were huge gaps in the gas tank. And so it was leaking fuel. And it was leaking fuel until it got up to speed, and it had expanded enough that the holes were no longer there. And so they had to figure out, how do we get the fuel in it and get it fast enough, quick enough, so that we don't lose all the fuel before we can use it. And so there's a lot of big issues within hypersonics that require a lot of creative thinking. And so we really look at them in 6 sections. One is guidance, navigation, and control. So when you're going, 5 times the speed of sound, a split second, and you have gone a huge distance. And so when you're making decisions about how do you control it, how do you communicate with it, how do you control it, or I already said control, use AI to navigate, how do we do this so that we don't take too long and we're completely off course? The second one, which is a huge one and a really cool one, is materials. We are literally creating new materials to build hypersonic vehicles, ones that withstand the heat, ones that can deal with the pressure changes and the sonic booms. Propulsion is a fun one, and the people who study propulsion tend to be a little bit crazier and funner to talk with. But how do we get something going that fast? And once we get it going that fast, how do we keep it going that fast? So there's cool ideas of how do we design the engines, how do we design the fuel, do we rocket boost it, do we propel it, do we drop it from another aircraft? Hypersonic environments is really just looking at the heat and the flow, like just a couple inches above the aircraft, and you're so much going on, that it's its own area of study. Energetics, looking at energy transfer from the aircraft to the atmosphere, from the aircraft to the sensors inside. And then probably my favorite is testing. We can't just go fly an aircraft willy-nilly without testing it first. And so there's a lot of modeling, there's a lot of simulations, there are flight tests, and there are wind tunnel tests. And if you don't know what a wind tunnel is, it is a container, small, big, and rather than having the aircraft move through the wind at hypersonic speeds, we have the aircraft steady, and we move the air at hypersonic speeds past it. And so we're able to see how it's going to interact with the hypersonic environments. If you saw the movie Hidden Figures, the scene where she goes in and her heel gets stuck in the floor and she just barely gets out before the wind starts blowing, that was a wind tunnel. And so there are wind tunnels that are that big, and then there are wind tunnels that are literally the size of a shoebox. And so they serve different purposes, and the wind tunnel testing that they do is really fun and really cool. So with that said, there's a lot of really cool ways to get into hypersonics. And we've been talking a lot, and a lot of people, based off of what we talked about, think, well, I got to go get a STEM degree. But hypersonics is really, it's not necessarily something you major in. It's something that you take your expertise and apply it to that. And so, your typical people or the aerospace engineers and the mechanical engineers and the material science people. But within hypersonics, what we need is starting to shift. We need electrical engineers, because when you're going that fast, a lot of the materials we use for electronics are going to melt. And so how do you get the sensors and everything working on your aircraft so that they don't melt and they work properly? You know, mathematics and computer science, you know, there are so many simulations that are created that we need the kids who, you know, they want to do video game creation. Cool, create a video game about a hypersonic vehicle so that we can test these different flights. Scientists and engineers are great. They're not the best communicators. So we need technical writers who can translate what they're doing so that they can share with others. There are many companies right now that are looking to create hypersonic passenger travel. So how can we get ourselves from here to LA in a half hour? Well, your here would be less than a half hour. You know, and so that's a lot of business development and business management. And on my side of the thing, there is a huge issue of cybersecurity. A lot of what we do is classified. And so how do we protect what we are, our research, so that we are sharing with the right people? And those are kind of our ideas with like degrees, but there's also a huge need for our technicians and, you know, 2-year degree students. You know, we need the craftsmen, we need people to build the aircraft, we need people to maintain the aircraft. We're creating these specialized materials, which is really cool, but it also means that we need to be able to weld with them and solder with them. And so, you know, having your students that's really into welding, be like, you know what, you should check out hypersonics, because if you can learn to weld and work with these specialized materials, you're going to have a really awesome job and a lot of job security. You know, and so there's electricians and pipe fitters and non-destructive inspectors are really cool jobs that are going to be needed, especially as we start to go from research and development more into manufacturing, that are going to come up. And so it's not just our STEM students that we're looking for, it's a whole realm of students that are interested in this and just want to apply their expertise to the hypersonics careers. Any thoughts or questions there? Yes, no? There you go. And there is a bit of hypersonics research and whatnot going on in your area. Montana Tech and MSU both have hypersonics programs, or they might call them high-speed programs, but stuff they're doing there. Malmstrom Air Force Base has some hypersonics work going on there, and MSE is a company that works within hypersonics. And so there's not as much going on in your area as there is in mine, but hypersonics is definitely growing in Montana and is becoming more of job possibilities for the students who, you know, don't want to leave the state. So, back to the curriculum part. When we're looking at like, how do we introduce students to these different job opportunities? There are lessons built in that kind of give you a different perspective of what you might do in hypersonics. So there is a series of lessons that work with wind tunnels. And let me grab one for you. When we talk about wind tunnels, I'm talking about a cardboard box that you cut some holes in and you make your own homemade wind tunnel. This with a $10 fan that you can buy at Target or Walmart or on Amazon that's like a little desk fan, and you can do wind tunnel testing with your students. You can build aircraft, you can build different objects and put them in the wind tunnel to test and see how does it interact. There are some lessons that are about the whole materials issue. So a 4th grade lesson of using like a hair dryer to test different materials to see how they heat up and cool down and insulate things. Some chemistry lessons looking at what are the actual, you know, chemical properties of these materials and what will actually work best at the high temperatures. A lot of engineering design, giving students a task and having them work to build and design and test. And we have lots of them at all different age levels. And my rule of thumb with my lessons, as you can tell from my wind tunnel, is if I don't have the materials in my house or I can't find them at Walmart or Amazon for 20 bucks or less, I don't use them. So there's a lot of cardboard boxes, a lot of, can you build a rocket ship using a paper cup as your base? Because that lesson is a trash can rocket ship, where we are building a rocket ship out of the trash can that Robbie Raccoon lives in. And so the idea of being creative, but also just using materials that you probably have on hand, and it's nothing big and expensive. Okay. So if you don't mind hopping back to the Google Slides, on number 28, slide 28, sorry, there are some Post-it notes. And again, this is a lot of information. We've talked a lot of things. So, take a minute to yourself and think about some ideas that you're currently brewing, or a career path that you heard about that you thought would be really exciting to share with your students, or as I was glancing over, maybe there's a lesson I noted that you might want to actually look at. So pick a Post-it note and put a text box on it and write your thoughts. Just as a side note, I love the random names that Google gives the anonymous people. We have a anonymous Dumbo octopus. We have a kiwi. I mean, it really amuses me. And I love what someone's putting right now about marketing. And I will share the resources with you, but we actually worked with a graphic designer to help us create a activity book to hand out, because we do a lot of STEM events and whatnot, and we wanted an activity book. And so we actually reached out and had a graphic designer work with us and create some things. And so, weird ways that you don't think you would be involved in the hypersonics, marketing, design, that's all really important things to help us communicate what we're doing. All right, so last part I want to talk with you about is a lot of times, especially because of the recent news with the war in Ukraine and whatnot, when you think about hypersonics, you tend to think about weapons and war and military. But hypersonics is really a lot more than that. Any sounding rocket or space shuttle is going at hypersonic speeds. we're working on passenger flight at hypersonic speeds. And so hypersonics is really more than just the military aspects, which happens to be what my job is aligned with, but there's a lot more to hypersonics than that. And so what's also really, really cool is that there's going to be, in 10 years, I'll be able to create a new slide that says these are products that you use on an everyday basis that came from hypersonics research. Because this is a set of things that I know you've interacted with, probably all of them, that came from the NASA space program. So when they were developing the shields for their helmets, they came up with a material that now becomes scratch-resistant lenses. They needed different type of temperature probes, which led to ear thermometers. Shoe insoles came from making sure that the boots were better fitting for them, because the insoles would mold to their feet. Satellite navigation. Another one that's not on this slide is computer mouses. They needed a new way to interact on the spaceship with the thing. And so these are all technologies that came out of research from the NASA program that we use on an everyday life. And so what's cool to think about is you think about all the new materials we're developing and the new processes we're developing. How cool would it be if in 10, 15 years we have a new material that developed for hypersonic aircraft that is now embedded in firefighters' uniforms to better protect them from the heat? Or this new material is now used to line the hood of your car, so if your engine catches fire, it better contains the fire. And so there's lots of cool things that might come from the research, like what these objects did. And so how that goes back to the lessons is there's some lessons in here that you're like, I don't know how those are hypersonic. Or look at hypersonics from a different thing. Like for one, there's a 5th grade one that talks about there being more than 3 phases of matter. And we tie that to, hypersonics, because when you're going really really fast and the heat gets that high, you have a lot of ionization and plasma. And so you're dealing with more than just the 3 phases. When I started working on these with my team, I challenged myself to come up with a lesson in every content area, including biology. My background is physics, so physics, chemistry, I had those, but I was like, how do I bring hypersonics into earth space science? And actually, it's really cool because when they're developing aircraft, hypersonic, subsonic, whichever, they look at bird wings. And so there's a really cool lesson that looks at bird wing shapes and what the purpose of bird wings are, and how do those compare to aircraft wings. Another one, humans at supersonic speeds. Many of our students, whether it's age appropriate or not, have seen the new Top Gun movie. And in that movie, they are trying to hit Mach 10. And so I worked really hard to find a child appropriate clip from that movie of them going Mach 10 and talk about how, they have to wear specialized suits to go hypersonic. What if we evolved so that we could go hypersonic without the specialized suits? What would we have to do? And then I shared a little bit earlier about the art lesson, having students think creatively to create a poster about Sonic the Hedgehog or a Pokemon. The Pokemon were added from my son, who loves Pokemon and knows all of the ones that have supersonic and hypersonic abilities. And then a high school civics one, which it takes on kind of the governmental role of how do you make decisions about hypersonic programs, and gives them a set of data from different government agencies on hypersonics and how they're spent and used. And we are quickly wrapping up, but I do want one more thing from you, please. So back on the Google Slides, slide 30, I would love if one word that comes to mind, if you came out of this, what was the one word you would use to describe hypersonics, and just put it in that slide. And if someone else used the same word, put it again. Please and thank you. By the way, I appreciate that none of you put fast. That's usually what I get. So I love the engaging and wild. This is awesome. Oh, and we have 5 minutes left. This is perfect. So 2 things for you. One is you guys are in out of school program. And so these lessons will work perfect for you, but also it gives you a little bit more wiggle room because you don't have to exactly do the standards like teachers do. We have done a handful of outreach as part of the team. We have been working with 4-H Indiana, the Purdue extension, and we've actually come up with a Hypersonics 4-H kit. So they have boxes with the materials and 3 lessons for elementary, 3 for middle, 3 for high school that they can do with their groups and different activities. In the lessons, there are the museum tours that I talked about. There is a virtual tour that you can do of the Air and Space Museum in DC. There's also a blank one that if you have a great resource near you, that you can create your own checklist, and it's a scavenger hunt. And so you're asking students to go around and find these different aircraft and decide if they're subsonic, supersonic, or hypersonic, like how fast can they go, what's a cool fact about them. We are currently working to develop a scouting badge on hypersonics. Our first draft is complete, and we are working there. And we are also very close to releasing, and all of these materials, most of these materials are available on the link I'm about to show you as an outreach packet. And so if you are going to talk to a group, you know, what are 2 or 3 lessons you could do quickly and easily with them kind of packaged together. And all of these lessons, and there are a lot of them now, and so, you know, happy to take questions if you're looking for something specific, are available online. And what I like about these lessons is each lesson, I'm going to hop back, each lesson has a lesson overview, the standards, learning objectives, essential overarching questions. But I think what's key for educators, if you're not super comfortable with hypersonics, there is a list of all the vocabulary words that are both hypersonic and whatever science content are in there. There's a quick paragraph that gives an overview of the concepts. So a quick refresher if you haven't taught conservation of energy in a while. There's a materials list. All the handouts are there. There are connections to the different STEM careers that we talked about. And there's a section of references and resources, and those are both resources for you and for your students. And so there are places that you can go and do some background reading if you want, or you can use those with your students. And I did make sure they are all student appropriate before listing them. And so, so all the lessons are there, and I can put the website in the chat as well for you guys. And do you have any questions? Hop off mute and ask in person or type it in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this and powering through all of our technical difficulties, everybody. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Real quick before we all sign off, if anybody is interested in either ECP or OPI credits for this, let me know. I will be sending out a follow-up email with some of that information. And then just quickly to highlight for everybody, we've got a networking call next week around funding. Hillary, And I dropped the registration link for that in the chat. Any last questions or ideas?
Okay, and I am throwing my email in the chat. If you have questions about lessons or are thinking of using something, but you're not quite sure what you need, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to brainstorm with you. So, yeah, have fun looking at the resources. I say I had a lot of fun making them. And just as a note, all of these lessons have been tested by my kids. It cost me a lot of Starbucks, but they have all been kid tested and somewhat approved. As much as a 15-year-old will approve a lesson. So.
And I'm admitting a couple folks right now, there was a little glitch on the timing of this. It was, I think the original Zoom link said it was at 11. And it was actually at 10. And so we changed that. But we will have the recording up for anybody that is interested. And I will reach out to those of you, to everybody that signed up, whether or not they were able to make it today, with the link to the training, to the recording. And then we'll also make sure that everybody gets both your email address and the link to the website as well.
Great.
If I could
Yeah,
pop
Lori,
in real quick.
please.
I have the great honor of working with Stephanie through most weeks and getting to hear all kinds of grand ideas. But I wanted to share out again. Thank you all who are here, or the other teachers, after school folks you share with. And I think Montana's probably one of the greatest states ever. So I'm thrilled whether we're working with 10 people or 100. So if there's something you need, please reach out directly to Stephanie or to me, and we'll see what we need to do. I could always put Stephanie on an airplane and send her out. We may wait till after the February timeframe on that. But, this is the only way we get into some new things and bridge gaps, and I love the cat. So just
Yeah, thanks.
share our enthusiasm to work with you. So just reach out, let us know what you need, and we'll go from there.
Awesome.